What if I told you, most women never actually reject men? They reject emotional weakness wearing a man's face. That's not what most men want to hear, because for years you've been taught the lie that love is earned by proving yourself, that if you give more text, explain more, you'll finally be chosen, that if you just perform hard enough, she'll stay. But the brutal truth, women don't leave because you weren't good enough. They leave because your frame collapsed under pressure. They test you not because they want to hurt you, but because female nature respects strength and exposes weakness. The problem is not her silence, not her pulling back, not her mixed signals. The problem is how most men react to it with panic, over-explaining, and self-betrayal. You're not being rejected, you're failing the test you never knew existed. Because in modern dating, emotional mastery isn't optional, it's survival. And today, I'll show you exactly why most men lose the frame before they even realize it. And how the silent power. These 5 Machiavellian rules will make you the man she can't test, can't control, and can't replace. You thought being a good man would be enough. You thought if you gave more, loved harder, and always stayed available, she would finally feel safe and loyal. You believed that if you explained your intentions, apologized for misunderstandings, and constantly reassured her she'd never leave. But she did. And you stood there confused, asking yourself, what else could I have done? The answer: nothing. Because it was never about what you did. It was about who you became. The moment you started chasing her reassurance, you taught her to question your strength. You see, most men think women are drawn to generosity, consistency, and full transparency. But female nature is wired to test emotional stability before granting long-term respect, not out of cruelty, but out of design. She doesn't consciously test your words, she tests your frame. When she pulls back emotionally, cancels plans, throws cold remarks, or gives you the silent treatment, she's not seeking your explanation. She's measuring your reaction. And most men fail right there. You text first. You explain too much. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You try to overcompensate to fix her emotions. Every desperate action silently communicates one brutal message: I need your validation to feel secure. And the moment she senses that, her respect erodes. Desire dies where stability collapses. She didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because your frame dissolved under pressure. Because in masculine-feminine dynamics, emotional mastery isn't attractive, it's non-negotiable. What destroys most men isn't failure, it's reactivity. It's the inability to sit inside discomfort without immediately trying to fix it. Every time she withdraws, every time she gets silent, every time she sends mixed signals, that's not random. That's the test. And most men fail not because they don't care, but because they care too loudly. She ignores the message, you double text. She pulls back emotionally, you over-apologize. She seems distant. You pour out validation, hoping it will pull her closer. But every word you send isn't closing the gap, it's exposing the weakness. Understand this. In the game of attraction, neediness is repellent. Calm silence is magnetic. Machiavelli understood human nature better than anyone. A prince must learn not to be good. He must learn to act when necessary, but never from desperation. When you need her response to regulate your emotions, you're no longer leading the dynamic, you're surrendering it. Here's the silent truth most men never learn. Women don't consciously reject you for caring. They pull away when your emotions start orbiting theirs. Your frame, your emotional center, must be immovable. Silence isn't emptiness. Silence is a mirror. It reflects whether you need her attention to feel stable. And when you panic to fill that silence, you teach her something dangerous: I can pull him off-center anytime I want. And once that perception locks in her mind, desire begins to erode. Not out of malice, not out of cruelty, out of pure biology. Because attraction is wired for strength, not for noise. not for emotional leakage. The man who speaks less forces her to lean forward, to wonder, to question. Mystery triggers her emotional engagement. Predictability breeds her emotional distance. In the real world, when she gets distant, you stay calm. When she tests your patience, you let her sit in the uncertainty she created. When she expects you to chase, you give her the silence to feel her own emotions. Your restraint becomes your leverage. Because here's the brutal punchline. The man who reacts first loses control. The man who holds still controls the entire frame. Power belongs to the one who watches, who listens, who observes before moving. The more unpredictable you become, the harder you are to test, manage, or replace. In a world where most men overshare, overpursue, and overreact, be the man whose silence makes her restless. The man whose calmness makes her lean in. The man whose stillness forces respect. Because in masculine power, control isn't proven by your words, it's declared by your silence. Every relationship operates within a frame. It's invisible, but it controls everything. Either you establish the frame or you get trapped inside hers. Most men don't even realize when they've lost it. They start strong, calm, collected. But as emotions grow, so does their need for reassurance. And once you need reassurance, you've already surrendered leadership. You begin to perform, you give more than necessary. You explain your every action. You seek constant validation. Your generosity starts as strength, but slowly becomes negotiation. Understand this: women don't measure your value by what you give. They measure it by how you hold your position under pressure. Because any gift offered from a place of insecurity feels like debt, not leadership. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago, men judge more by appearances than reality. In the modern world, appearance is not about external image, it's about emotional posture. If she senses you're working to be chosen, she unconsciously assumes you aren't high value. Because real value never chases approval. The more you try to prove you're worthy, the more you reveal you doubt your own worth. Let me give you the brutal truth. When you overinvest emotionally, hoping she'll finally feel secure, you're not calming her doubts, you're amplifying them. She starts thinking, why does he need my constant reassurance? Why is he afraid of losing me? Is he really as strong as he appeared? And once those questions enter her mind, respect starts to erode even if she can't explain why. Because attraction isn't logical, it's felt. In the real world, the man who holds the frame allows silence to speak for him. He speaks less than he knows. He allows her imagination to work in his favor. He controls pacing, tension, and distance. Presence over performance. Calm over explanation. Leadership over negotiation. Here's the tactical shift. Next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. When she pulls back, don't chase. When you feel the silence, let it work for you. Your calmness in uncertainty is the loudest display of strength she'll ever experience. If you don't control the frame, you'll always be reacting inside hers. And the man who reacts isn't the man she respects, it's the man she manages. Most men make the same costly mistake in relationships. They believe effort alone will create love. They believe if they give more love, harder, stay consistent, and show endless devotion, she'll finally feel safe, stable, and committed. But they miss one brutal truth. Her heart doesn't move by your effort. It moves by her belief system. Attraction doesn't start with emotions. It starts with perception. It starts in the mind. You can flood her world with attention, affection, and generosity, but if her core beliefs about men are broken, your effort becomes meaningless. Many women walk into relationships carrying subconscious narratives. Men always disappoint. Men are weak. No man stays loyal. All love eventually fades. When these beliefs exist under the surface, your effort doesn't rewrite them. It simply gets filtered through them. She sees your love, but her mind converts it into compensation. She begins to think, he's overcompensating. Why is he trying so hard? Maybe he's too good to be true. And slowly, the emotional ground you thought you were building begins to erode beneath your feet. Machiavelli once said, "The first method to judge a man's intelligence is by observing who he surrounds himself with." The same principle applies here. Before you invest deeply in a woman's emotions, you must assess the health of her mind. Because here's the dangerous trap. You can't love her into security if her mind is addicted to chaos. No amount of gifts, texts, or reassurance will stabilize a woman who thrives on emotional instability. You'll exhaust yourself trying to fill a void that isn't yours to fix. She'll admire your effort and still walk away, not because you weren't good enough, but because you were never able to override her belief system. The tactical truth most men avoid: you must observe her early. Pay attention to how she speaks about men, about her past, about accountability. Watch her patterns, not her words. Her emotional health is not your responsibility to repair, but it is your responsibility to screen. Real-world move. Before you invest your time, energy, and soul, ask yourself, is she mentally prepared for real stability? If the answer is no, detach early. If the answer is yes, proceed with calm leadership, not desperate effort. Because the right woman doesn't make you work for basic peace, she mirrors your stability. Don't try to win her heart if her mind is addicted to drama. What she believes will always override what you give. Every woman wears a mask. You may see confidence, independence, sarcasm, or even cold detachment, but what you're really seeing is armor. Beneath that surface often lies a more fragile reality. A fear of being hurt. A fear of being fully seen. A fear of losing control. The problem is most men attack the mask directly, and that's exactly why they lose. When a woman puts up emotional walls, the average man reacts. He gets frustrated by her distance. He pushes for answers. He over-explains his feelings. He demands reassurance. He argues with her attitude rather than understanding her defense mechanism. But all he's really doing is confirming one thing in her subconscious. He can't handle my layers. He's not emotionally safe. And once she senses you can't sit in her complexity without losing composure, her trust begins to collapse. Because leadership isn't about controlling her emotions, it's about mastering your own. Machiavelli wrote, "It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver, not to hurt, but to gain insight while remaining hidden." This is your advantage as a man. You don't need to fight her mask. You simply need to see it and remain unmoved. The man who doesn't react becomes the one she eventually trusts to let her guard down. Here's the forbidden truth. Much of her coldness isn't rejection, it's protection. She wants to be seen, but she's terrified you'll flinch once you see all of her. The weak man tries to fix her immediately. The strong man observes mirrors and allows space. Real-world application. When she withdraws or throws sharp comments, stay calm. Mirror her energy with subtle empathy. Acknowledge the tension without trying to resolve it. Allow her to process without forcing emotional intimacy. Her mask isn't your enemy. Her trust is your real target. Here's the tactical move that separates boys from men. When you remain grounded in the face of her emotional volatility, you communicate strength beyond words. You signal, "I see you. I don't fear you, and I won't collapse because of you." That's where true safety is born. And women only submit emotionally to men who feel emotionally safe. You don't tear her armor off, you become the one man safe enough for her to remove it herself. If there's one law most men break without realizing, it's this. The moment she fully understands you, she begins managing you. At first you think full transparency is romantic. You pour out your emotions. You over-explain your every thought. You're always available, always responsive, always predictable. In the early stage, she may appreciate the attention. She may even call it refreshing. But over time, that familiarity breeds something far more dangerous: boredom. Because predictability kills tension, and tension is the oxygen of attraction. Here's the forbidden truth. Women crave polarity, the dynamic of anticipation, curiosity, and mystery. When you remove that, you remove her reason to chase. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you truly are." The wise man shows enough to invite interest, but reserves enough to fuel intrigue. The moment she can map every reaction, every text, every mood shift, you lose the advantage of uncertainty. And uncertainty is where desire lives. The weak man seeks comfort through emotional overexposure. He texts first every time. He shares every feeling. He announces his every move. He makes himself completely accessible. In doing so, he removes every ounce of pursuit from her side of the dynamic. She no longer wonders, she expects. She no longer feels the thrill, she manages the schedule. The strong man understands a different game. He moves with purpose, not routine. He offers presence, not dependence. He reveals his thoughts strategically, not impulsively. He allows curiosity to work on his behalf. The less predictable you become, the more emotionally engaged she remains. Because mystery isn't about playing games, it's about protecting your emotional sovereignty. Don't announce every plan. Don't explain every mood. Don't give access to every emotion immediately. Let her experience the unknown in you. A man who is fully understood is easily controlled. A man who holds layers of depth remains endlessly fascinating. This isn't manipulation. This is mastery. You're not withholding to punish, you're reserving to preserve your power. When she can no longer predict you, she can no longer manage you. And the man who can't be managed is the man she can't replace. If you've made it this far, you've already done what 99% of men avoid. You've faced the mirror. You've confronted the uncomfortable truths no one warned you about. Most men are trapped in a silent war. They don't even see a war where they chase approval, shrink themselves for affection, and negotiate for love that should never require performance. They confuse emotional access with intimacy. They confuse predictable comfort with stability. They confuse validation with love. But you're no longer here to beg for attention. You're here to command respect. Because in the world of masculine power, silence isn't absence, it's authority. Boundaries aren't rejection, they're self-respect. Mystery isn't manipulation, it's sovereignty. You don't lead by over-explaining. You lead by existing in your own frame, unshaken, unbothered, unbreakable. The men who live like this aren't chasing relationships, they're building kingdoms. And women don't test kings, they follow them. The moment you no longer need her approval is the moment she feels your power.